Hey, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I'm excited to do the big Hershey Fall preview here. Hershey is coming up next week, October 5th through the 6th. It's pretty cool. There's a cookout on Tuesday, October the 4th. So if you are attending in person, you want to be sure to check that out. And the preview is Tuesday night, and then the auction starts Wednesday night, 5 p.m. So you can go to armsotheby's.com to look at all these incredible lots. And I want to welcome Jake O'Gorman. Jake, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you being on. This is your first time on the podcast, and you're one of the car specialists that has been around for a while with RM. So before we get to the cool cars, if you would tell our listeners a little about how you got to RM and what you specialize in.
Yeah, so actually, so this Hershey is funny enough. This Hershey will be my 10th, 10th anniversary of working an RM auction.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, which is pretty good because I'm only turning 30 this year.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. So the way I got hooked up with RM is I went to McPherson College down in McPherson, Kansas for automotive restoration. And it's a 4-year program where you learn everything except chroming and making, bending glass. You do
Right.
every other piece of restoring a car. And you learn about history and all that. I enjoy the pre-war cars and brass era cars. And I was only in school for maybe 2 months when I was selected with another student to go to Hershey for the week as sort of ambassadors for the school. So we went around, went to the AACA show, visited the swap meet, met with different some of the board of directors for the college, which
Okay.
included different restoration shops and Mercedes-Benz Classic Center, that sort of thing. And while I was there, I met my, my bosses, Rob and Gord and a couple other key key people in RM's, uh, history at the lobby bar of the hotel.
You can always find the RM folks at the bar. There's no doubt about that.
That's it. And I asked them if I could work in the summertime since I was Canadian. I said, hey, can I come up and intern for the summer?
Yep.
And Rob told me, well, why don't you work tomorrow? We, drive some cars. If you know what you're doing, get in the car, see if you know anything. And yeah, that's how it started. I volunteered that auction, drove some cars, and the rest is history.
That's really cool. Yeah, and at least from an outsider looking in, I've only been with RM Consulting for a couple of years now. Is you seem to be the guy to call when you don't know how to drive a car, because you seem to know how to drive everything and get everything started. If it it's been sitting for 50 years, at least my perception is you know how to get it running after 50 years of laying dormant. Would you agree with that? Are you that good?
I would say I give it a very good try. I'm I decent diagnostic skills on that,
Okay.
especially early things.
Early
Early.
things, yeah. Yeah, and so I know Hershey is known a lot for their pre-war cars, and our listeners will see here in a second that that's not all that is available at Hershey. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will overlay some of the pictures of the cars we're talking about, so you can experience, see some of these visually, so you can see what we're talking about, which is pretty cool. A little trivia question here for you. I know you have brass era, nickel era. How do you typically define? I mean, obviously brass was the earliest. Then you had nickel, and then that went through like what, 1926, 27, then the chrome?
Yeah. So typically brass, so as defined by like Horses Carriage Club and some of those clubs, 16 and back is brass era, but you see the nickel starting in about 14.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so about 14, there'll be cars, 14, 15, some 16 cars that'll be, you'll see both. You'll see nickel and brass. And so we had a Packard in Amelia this last year that was a brass era car, by your
Right.
definition, but it was nickel. So instead of, had a lot of nickel plating and black paint rather than, shiny brass.
Okay, so there's always an exception to the rule, basically, right?
Always.
And what was the transition nickel to chrome? About 26, 27?
Yeah, Chrome and those some stuff a little bit earlier, like certain manufacturers. A lot of times, some of the timetable goes by, what was Ford doing at that time,
Okay.
right? And they were building, the most cars of everybody pretty well. So at that time, you want some are recognized like very late Model Ts, and obviously like the first Model A's where they were using chrome and even stainless.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and I might sound like I know a little bit of what I'm talking about, but I don't. I just happened to be at the Dayton Concours recently, and they had a line of Marmots, and one was a 26, one was a 27, one had nickel, one had chrome. So I kind of put one and one together and came
Yeah.
up with three. So
No, that's about the transition year, right? And it's interesting too, when these cars were restored, depending on when they were restored. Some might have been restored back to being a nickel era car. Some may have been restored to being a chrome era car. I mean, we see it when we're evaluating cars, and I know you have too, with different car collections. Is sometimes cars get restored inauthentically, but it was done so long ago that it's maybe hard to tell unless
right.
you really dig into it to see
Yeah.
what the finishes should be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that chrome is 50 years old. Yeah, it was recombed from, 1962, or
Yeah,
whatever.
when it
72.
was a 35-year-old car.
Yeah, right. 72, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go into some of the cars here. This is somewhat free form. I just wanted you to kind of talk about some of the cars that you found interesting in the Hershey sale. I know some of them you'll know a lot more than others. But yeah, if you would kind of run down some of the cars that you found interesting, exciting that are showing up at Hershey, and then I have a list of cars here that if you don't cover them, I'll mention a few afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, of course. I can definitely do that. So I'd say one car, like I'll start with one of mine because I'm a little biased. But but the 31 Packard, it's deluxe. The proper name's Deluxe 8 convertible coupe by LeBaron. So it is on a 845 chassis. So 8th series Packard in 1931, 145-inch wheelbase chassis. So huge, long car for the era.
Right.
The big 8-cylinder engine, and this particular car, it was semi-custom bodied by LeBaron for Packard. They made a handful of them. There's only 3 that survive now. But one of the controversies of this particular relationship with LeBaron and Packard is Packard took this design and essentially used it as a prototype for their 33 and 34 convertible coupes.
Okay.
So, and we have a 34 convertible coupe as well in Hershey. So what LeBaron did in 31 is they made a completely fold flat top where you could call it disappearing, but it's not a hard cover. It has a soft canvas cover over the convertible top once it closes down.
Yep.
But it's flush with the body. You can't see it. So, rather than, stacking up like similar cars or the factory bodies Packard would have. So this car, it's fascinating because of that. It has some unique features in the door where it has some cool body lines, small windshield with a slight rake to it, and just overall a clean looking car. And this one actually has a trunk instead of a typical rumble seat.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm looking at the pictures now, and what would you call that color?
So it's like a little
Dark
tan,
dark tan with
tan.
even darker highlights, pinstriping, and red interior, red
Yeah.
accents. It's striking color combination. And you're right. You look at it from the profile, and it's straight from the hood, curving back to the rear license tag with the way they designed that top. It is very good looking. I was wondering about that trunk, if that was a rumble seat or a trunk. So
Yeah. So when they has a trunk instead of a rumble seat, which it's interesting if you're, two passengers want to take luggage with you. Like you have a ton of space now,
Right.
but you can't throw, two buddies in the back.
Right. Right.
Not living
Yeah.
ones.
Right. Right. Yep. And on this particular one, the estimate's 170 to 220. Yeah, very beautiful. And I do see it has a little luggage rack in the back. It looks like you could throw a couple pieces of luggage if needed. All right. All right. Well, that's the first one. That's actually one of the ones I picked. I wanted to cover. So I found that one interesting as well. Yeah.
Well, if you want to revisit it, so this is coming from like a good friend before he was a client, and he's actually put over 5,000 miles on this car in a little under 3 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
He's driven it. It's a great driving car.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
What's next on your list? What is another car that you thought was really cool?
Yeah, so I would have to say the giant Pierce 66. I love big horsepower cars. It's just it's what I like, especially from that era. And this one's a 13, where you can see it has more nickel on it than brass.
Right. Yep. I just pulled up the picture here. It's a dark red, black interior, black top. Yeah, this thing looks like a locomobile for the road, right? Locomotive for the road, right?
Yep. It's awesome. And, these cars are just, big horsepower, like buckets of torque, tall wheels, like just a big imposing tour car. And, you're just like you're strapped to an engine, essentially running down the road. Like, it's so cool. I'm a fan of this. Is like one of my first auctions with RM in Hershey. We had one of, actually, it might have been this car last time we offered it. And yeah, I just love big horsepower early cars. There's something about it, you kind of like makes you feel like a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a 1913 Pierce era Model 66A, 7-passenger touring. So you can take all your friends with you. The estimate is $500,000 to $700,000, and it's an interesting note here: 825 cubic inches. Oh my goodness! And that is just huge. Let's see. All right, noted by Guinness World Records as having the largest engine of any production automobile, larger even than the famed Bugatti Royale. Wow, that's really cool. It's huge. I mean, it's almost like a fire truck.
It's awesome. I love, I love these cars. And
now,
yeah, go on.
Have you driven this one?
I have not driven this one. So that's something I'm looking forward to in Hershey, is even just moving it around. Right. In reading about this car, under the prior owner, he went through and kind of put some modern components in the clutch system to make it a little easier for driving, especially touring. These cars were made for long stretches of, fairly I'd say, ungroomed roads, and you didn't have a lot of traffic lights,
right,
that you were hitting, or modern drivers. So putting in a clutch that's easier to use, some brakes that will work a little bit better in modern traffic. That's always good upgrades for this era of car.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's really great. That is a beautiful car for sure. Oh, wow. Yeah, unfortunately, I will not be at Hershey in person. I was really hoping to be there, so I just have to enjoy these over the internet. All right, what do you have next for us? Is it a brass era? Is it nickel? Is it chrome? Is it later?
Well, so again, I want to try and give a big overview, but honestly, I have to say the 1911 Stanley Model 70 Touring. So alternative fuel vehicle.
Oh, okay. Yep.
That we're offering. That's that is the only alternative fuel vehicle we have in Hershey this year. Sometimes we have electric cars as well.
So yeah, let's talk about this one a little bit. You like the early stuff, obviously, because you keep picking the early. Okay. I'm trying to find it online here. I know I've got it here somewhere. Well, tell us a little bit about it. What is the alternative fuel? Steam?
Yeah. So steam. Yeah. So
there it is. Got it.
I wouldn't, it uses, so these steam cars, they use a mix of kerosene and diesel. Sometimes they use naphtha or in that, and they actually have a burner underneath the car in the front, under that coffin nose, that heats up the water and produces steam, and then it uses to drive a piston, just like a locomotive.
Now, there is no relationship to me and this company, unfortunately, or else I wouldn't be doing a podcast. But yeah, it's beautiful.
You got to
So
own one now.
I
At least a
know I need to
badge.
get one.
Get the script for your wall.
That's right. That's right. Let's see, 100 to $150,000. So it's a Model 70 Touring. Now, what does the 70 stand for?
So typically it's like equivalent horsepower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to check that, fact check that before you put that in. But yeah, so this particular car. It's important because it has history back to almost new, like
Right.
exactly 1913. So it was only a couple years old when it's known about in the Stanley registry. Many of these steam cars being like they have wood frames, wood bodies, you have boiling water and fire. A lot of them didn't survive.
Imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or they're repurposed in other things, etc. So what this particular car actually survived from its early days to now in like mostly original configuration, like chassis and body and that sort of thing. This car was also owned by a very early collector, James Melton, the famous celebrity and also a car collector. And then it went into the Rockefeller Museum in Arkansas.
Okay.
Lived there for a number of years, where the current family bought it out of 50 plus years ago. So it's had not many owners, very few owners over its whole life. A lot of these Stanleys, most of the ones you see running, or if you've been fortunate enough to see one running around, it's been a built car from components. There was quite a prolific restorer and builder of these cars named Carl Amesley, and he built many of these late 60s, 70s, I believe into the 80s. So you could take him, a photo of I want a Stanley model, whatever, and 2-passenger, 5-passenger, whatever horsepower, and he would build it.
Okay. Wow, that's really cool. This one's striking too. It's like a dark green with light yellow wheels and undercarriage, which is cool. And obviously brass. So black interior, black top. Very, very cool. Yeah. I will have to get one of those. Those are pretty cool. So like I said, 100 to 150. All right, let's see. What's next? You're going to keep us in the teens or you're going to move a little later?
I mean, I'll go a little bit later. I gotta pick that now because I love all cars. They all have their purpose and their different events, and you kind of need one from every era, right? So,
There is one I think I know you know a little bit about. I did want to ask you about. It's the Diamond T pickup truck.
oh yes. Yeah.
Tell us
So
about that, because from a guy who doesn't know a lot about pickup trucks, it's my understanding these are known as the more beautiful pickup trucks, I guess, of the era, and they are absolutely stunning. Looking directly, the way the grill is, and even the side vents and everything.
yeah, 100%. They, typically trucks of this era were cabs that were, had flatbeds on the back, or they weren't really pretty. They weren't designed to be pretty vehicles. Where Diamond T, these particular models were sort of geared towards the owner of the company,
Right.
or they were very well built, a little bit higher end trucks, and had design put into them to where they have beautiful chrome accents, contrasting colors. The dashboards are a work of art. They're wonderful cars.
Yeah.
And to collectors.
Come and see Rob.
I'm in the office.
That's okay.
to collectors now, these are, they're show trucks, right? And they look beautiful. You can still take them out, and they're very, they're still heavy duty trucks where you could go use them, but typically they're show trucks more than work trucks now.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay. And then another car that I think you'll know a lot about, and I wanted to know about this because I've seen these on the Concourse show field before, and I've just been impressed by their presence. 1927 Locomobile Model 90 Sportif. I don't know if
Yep.
I'm saying that correct or
Yep.
not.
You are.
Tell us about this car, like just the brand in general. Now the estimate on this one is 70 to 90 grand. Tell us a little bit about this huge beast of a car.
Yeah, so this Model 90 Sportif is sort of at the end of the road for Locomobile. They were a very high-end automobile manufacturer, in the teens and that, O's and teens. And they're one of the companies that didn't survive the Great Depression.
Okay.
Yeah, so they built very, again, well-appointed, higher horsepower, bigger, strong, sturdy vehicles for upmarket clientele, and this is one of them. So big touring car, two windshields on it. You see the second one
Yeah.
can fold around, protect from the wind. Dual spares in the back, so very clean looking side profile. Yeah, and just a big touring car. This particular one, we offered it, I think, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago in Arizona. Was the last time we offered it, and since then the current owner went through and replaced the tires. I believe they did a new top on it and cleaned up some of that plating. Went through and gave it a really thorough detail and a heavy servicing to make sure it can run down the road.
Okay. Yeah. Before we talk about more cars that are 100 years old, I do want to let our listeners know that there is some other stuff. I'll just rattle off. We don't need to talk about these, but just so our listeners understand, we do have a 79 Mercedes 450 SL. Let's see, a 1959 Mercedes 190 SL. I saw a Grand National GNX, low mileage.
No reserve.
No reserve. No reserve. We got a 73 Land Rover Series 3. That is one of my favorite. I mean, I know they don't drive, possibly as well as you would think, but they're just, gorgeous Rovers, So a little bit of everything across the board. Obviously, we have a lot of stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I'm going to throw another one at you here. I would call it, I guess, one of our two premier car, or our premier car here. The Duesenberg we have, 1930 Duesenberg Model J limousine. If you get to talk to that a little bit, 750 to 950, but not just, Duesenbergs are incredible cars. I did a podcast in the past where I listed the fastest car from every decade, and the Duesenberg was the only one that was the fastest for 2 decades, the 20s and the 30s, even though they were pretty much all made in 1929. But not, if you would talk about this Duesenberg, but also the coach built aspect of it. Give our listeners a little understanding of what it meant to get a car coach built back then.
Certainly. So back in that era, in the 20s and into the 30s, you would order, a certain level of clientele, they would order a chassis from a manufacturer like Duesenberg. In fact, Duesenberg, they pretty well only sold chassis, and you would take it to your coach builder of choice and have a body built, as you would back in the carriage days, where you would go to names like Brewster or Willoughby and actually have a carriage built. You would have that done with your car. So this particular one is built by Willoughby out of Utica, New York, and they were known primarily for these closed, luxurious cars. So this particular one being a limousine, long wheelbase, lots of cabin space for the occupants in the back. You were typically chauffeur driven in this type of car, this particular car, and yeah, it was built to be, you would enjoy the ride from start to finish. So, nice finishes inside, lots of cigarette lighters, curtains. I believe this one as well has a divider window in it for, to kind of
Keep yourself away from the chauffeur, right?
yeah,
A
a
little
little
privacy.
privacy, that sort of thing. Yeah, so it's a great, they're it's a great also like touring car, even modern times, because you have space for your luggage, right? You
Right.
can throw your luggage in the back, or you can take buddies with you. I mean, you see these at the ACD festival, and everyone's having a great time. So you can pile five people in it.
Right. Yeah. So for our listeners, just to recap, so if you bought a Duesenberg chassis, you're basically buying the chassis, the wheels, the tires, the drivetrain, the engine, the brakes, all that kind of stuff that's underneath the skin correctly. And then you would take it to one of these coach builders, like getting a tailor-made suit, but you're actually getting the body of your car customized to your taste, correct?
Yep.
And yeah, and what I'm finding is, like you said, Willoughby is known for closed. The price of a 1930 Duesenberg can vary greatly based upon the coach builder, correct? Whether or not they were known as doing beautiful styling, or if they only did European cars, but they did one Duesenberg, right? That does add value to the car.
Certainly, and yeah, and certain manufacturers were known more for their open cars, some for, like you said, for their closed cars, and then their style. Typically, something like a limousine or certain sedans, the focus was on interior comfort and luxury, and how luxurious it was, and finishes and that, rather than the outside. So, the inside was the outside was shaped kind of around the interior compartment, whereas other coach builders would have, there'd be dramatic styling on the outside and maybe a little bit tighter quarters on the inside, or they would do it on a convertible coupe or a disappearing top type of car.
That's where the big dollars, come from the cars that look gorgeous on the outside, right? Like the disappearing top kind of cars.
100%. I mean, like you said, it varies wildly from, this car, I believe is priced, very, very well at 750 to 950 for a supercharged Duesenberg closed car, where an open car you can go, $4 million, $5 million, some of them,
Right.
for a 2-passenger open car.
Right. Yeah. Big
So,
difference there.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Well, while we're talking about fast cars that take you around in style, why don't you talk about the 1956 Bentley S1 Continental Sports Saloon by Park Ward? So that is another coach builder, right? Park Ward?
Yep, it's another coach builder over in the UK. And that particular car, again, only made a certain amount of this sports saloon style. So again, a little upgraded from the, a normal Bentley saloon of that era. We actually, interestingly enough, we have a kind of a companion car to this in the Flying Spur.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, as well. So the Flying Spur, it's a 4-door version, sort of on the same chassis, similar chassis as the other Bentley, which is kind of
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah.
So main differences being 2 doors versus 4 doors. So
Sure.
this particular 56 Bentley, it was bought at auction by the consignor way back in the 70s, and
wow.
he drove it as more or less a daily car in New York City through late 70s and 80s. And he mentioned to me he got a lot of attention back then driving something like this around New York.
Oh, I bet for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to pick a few more cars here that you may or may not know very well. So expect
Me.
a quiz. Yeah, I like that.
I'll
All right.
make
How
up
about
if I don't.
It's right. How about the 1914 Thomas Model K690 Flyabout, $650 to $850,000. This is actually the cover artwork for this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast or watching YouTube, this is the car we're talking about. Tell us a little bit about this. It seems like it's pretty rare.
Yes. So Thomas was known for being the car that won the New York to Paris round the world race. So
The Thomas Flyer.
Thomas Flyer. Yep. So this one's obviously a little bit later car and a big multi-passenger car rather than a sporty, smaller, or not smaller, but sporty two-passenger car. And this particular car, I believe it was in the Hare collection for a number of years. Again, big horsepower car, great for touring. The home it's coming from, they are very fastidious in their upkeep and maintenance on cars, and they use them on these like long distance tours. So it's a great thing coming from a great home. This particular one,
For our listeners, it's actually red on red with a black top. It's stunning. It's really beautiful.
yeah, and yeah. So this one actually, it's been I don't want to say hot rodded, but upgraded, right, with a 90 horsepower
It's
kind of trim for the engine. But that's a lot for back then. You
Right.
know, if you think a comparable car of that era, I mean, there's a Page Detroit that's of the same era in the sale, and it's, I think, like 20 horsepower, if that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
on a good day.
Yeah.
So this was the supercar of the era. These big Thomases, big Peerlesses, big Pierce Arrows, that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. That's really cool. And I love the picture going down the road. It's got the American flag flying behind it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's two of our cars this year have American flags, equipped. But this and the Stutz, the Stutz Bearcat recreation.
Okay. Yep. All right. The next one is one I'm not that familiar with. Ironically, there is at the Concours I went to recently, they had, I think, 8 of these cars, including a 16 convertible. The 1931 Marmot 16 convertible sedan by LeBaron. So once again, by LeBaron, there's another coach builder. This estimate is $300,000 to $400,000. Now, this is a big V16 convertible. What do you know about the Marmot brand?
Yeah, so Marmot, they were the car company. They were the first car to win, or the first car company to win the first Indy 500.
Wow.
And one of the features that they developed was single seat race cars to win that Indy 500, because they employed this crazy new technology called a rear view mirror.
Right.
So you didn't have to have 2 people in the car, you could have 1. So
Right.
half the weight, 1 person, make it an error, and they won the 1911 Indianapolis 500 in the Marmot Wasp. So obviously going 2 decades later, the 31 Marmot 16, very advanced engine design for the period, and V16 engine, completely all aluminum engine.
Wow.
Heads, block, crankcase, oil pan, intake, obviously cast iron exhaust and internals and that, but very light comparative to other cars of the day that were completely cast iron. So fascinating that way. They were pretty nimble and fast cars of their day, being V16 powered, and about 200 horsepower is what they would advertise.
Wow. Okay.
Which is big.
Yeah, that's huge for the time. Now, this is a two-tone, like red and dark red. So very striking colors on this one as well. All right, I just have 3 more here I wanted to cover with you, and then if you have any more you want, just call them out. This is a package deal. So this is a 1960 Plymouth Fury 2-door hardtop with a 1957 Hershey's boat. And I absolutely love this because you've got the big fin style of 1960s Plymouth. It's red, two-tone red and white. And then what's even better is you got a big finned boat trailer behind it. Again, red with white accents. I can't imagine a better package going together, especially if you're headed down to the local cruise in. They would you just blow their minds pulling up in this, right? It's just a great combo.
100%. These, you know, I've always loved 60 and 59 Plymouth Dodges, the, forward look, big
Yeah.
fin sedans. Something to do, I think, watch Christine when I was like 12 something,
Right.
and it's always stuck in my head, right? those cars. And I'm also a fan of boats, so seeing them both together, I love the combination, especially being color coordinated like they are. And you're 100% right on seeing something like this at a car show. Like you're gonna win people's choice, like hands down.
Now, don't you live on a boat?
I did for 4 summers. I lived on a boat up here in Canada, but you can only live on it, May through till Hershey till October. But I did buy a house,
Okay.
about a year, a little over a year ago. So I officially have a garage and a bed that won't float away.
There we go. Okay. I thought you lived on a boat. Okay.
Uh,
All right. The next one is a car I know a little bit about. It's a 1936 Ford Model 68 Deluxe Phaeton. Now, what's cool about this car is there's a lot of 36 Ford Phaetons out there. I don't know. I love saying the word Phaeton. I love four-door convertibles. I think this is cool, and it's a really neat color combo. Let's see. I forgot the color. Vineyard green over brown leather, and it has a tan soft top and side curtains. What's amazing about this particular car is it is no reserve, and it has over $300,000 of work done to it by a previous owner. It's won all sorts of awards over the years. So you know what? If you're looking for a 36 Ford Phaeton or something in that era, I really want people to know that this car is here. The estimate's 45 to 55. Honestly, it should go for more because of the level of quality and the work done to this car. So I just wanted to let people know, no reserve car, 300 grand in receipts, and it could be yours somewhere in that range. So what do you know about these Phaetons?
Again, great, great pre-war cars to get into the hobby with.
Yep.
There's a huge club support for these types of V8 Fords. Obviously, the V8 Ford Club of America. They have gatherings. There's specific shows you can go to. The headquarters for the V8 Ford Museum is in Auburn, Indiana, and I'm sure they have gatherings there as well.
Right.
But yeah, great cars, V8 power, 3-speed. It has the look of a mid 30s styling to it. And this one has has its full set of side curtains, which is huge. Those are
Right.
very expensive to have done. And again, you're buying a car that someone's already spent all the money restoring, and you can buy and enjoy. So I think it's a no-brainer at that estimate.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. And the last one I wanted to talk about, just to get a little muscle car in here, is a 1962 Chevrolet Bel Air Sports Coupe. I thought this one is cool. A couple different reasons. One is it's the big 409. My uncle has an Impala with a 409, and I've been drilling over that since the late 70s. So I like those in general. It's bright red interior, red wheels with dog dish hubcaps. And it's pretty cool because looks like it was built to race. It's got the quarter mile specification package with radio delete, heater delete, and posi traction rear end. So I just thought this was cool. So I know you love all cars. What are your thoughts on this 62? I guess it's pre-muscle car, but man, this is a muscle car.
Yeah, well, it's definitely leading up to the muscle car and the horsepower wars, right, of the later
Yep.
60s. 100% it is. And I love a low optioned car from the 60s like this that is clean, right?
Yep.
Like from the wheels to the bench seat interior to just that single, floor shift, it's clean, and it kind of again looks like something you'd see rolling around in American Graffiti.
Right, right. You know, and I actually lied. I do have one more car. So
All good.
my
All good.
last one, I forgot about
Having
this one.
fun.
1959 Mercury Country Cruiser. Let's see, it's a station wagon, 40 to 60 grand. And what I love about this car, it's black and it has the faux wood grain. It's a station wagon. It's 59 Mercury, so it's got the big wings out back. And I really love the interior. So you got black with red interior, 9-passenger capacity with folding rear seat, power windows, power door locks, power steering, power brakes. It's just really, really cool. Would you be seen driving around in one of these?
Oh, 100%. Maybe, I'm getting older. I'm 30 now, right? And I'm going for comfort.
Comfort.
So, comfort, looking ahead, what am I going to haul my kids around with?
There you
Right?
go. Yep.
It can have 9, well, I can have, at least like 7 of
7
them.
kids.
Yeah.
That's what
And,
yep.
and yeah, it's awesome. These in recent years, these wagons have just gone, nuts. Some of these, 50s and 60s wagons, and I just love the look of them. And I think it's so cool because there's a whole generation that grew up riding in the back seat, looking at the back window of these cars, and
Right.
just see one at a car show. It's just so cool how they made these sedans into wagons and kind of the little accessories and tricks that different ones have.
No, that's really great. Great points there. So that's all I have. Is there anything else you wanted to cover on this episode of the Collector Car Podcast?
I'm just going through our list here, and I mean,
I think we hit all the big highlights, but I know there's a ton of
yeah,
cars.
there was a mix, a really good mix of cars this year from brass, horseless carriage type cars, big horsepower, 60s cars, 50s cars, a little bit of everything. And this year too, we have a really good mix of memorabilia, both nights of the auction, and everything from bronzes, kids' cars, highly detailed models, a couple airplanes like we had at Gene Ponder auction,
Yeah.
and my favorite, we have a lot of outboard motors, which
Oh, nice.
I think they're so cool.
They're beautiful.
They're very, very cool display pieces, polished up very well.
Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Jake, and I'll have all the information for our listeners in the description. So have fun in Hershey, and I wish I would see you there, but I won't. But I'll see you on a future episode of the podcast.
Sounds good to me. I really enjoyed it, Greg, and thank you for inviting me on.